Speak truth, each to his own neighbor, for we are members one of each other. Today, as we celebrate this votive Mass for the new evangelization, our thoughts and minds are brought back to this term that was introduced largely by Saint John Paul II, but which was also promulgated at the end of the Year of Faith, especially by Pope Emeritus Benedict. This new evangelization. It's a term with which many of us are quite familiar. It's that outreach of the church to our lapsed, you could say, brother and sister Catholics, those brothers and sisters of ours for whom perhaps the flame of the faith has grown a little cold. Kind of like what Jesus says to his disciples in the Gospel of Matthew, when he sends them and instructs them, go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Or in the language of our Gospel today, Jesus says that he himself was sent in the power of the Spirit to bring glad tidings to the poor and recovery of sight to the blind, recovery of sight to those who had become blind. Our collect for today's Mass, the opening prayer, contains a really beautiful line that I think captures the heart and the essence, not only the focus, but also the means of the new evangelization, where it says to us that we, in the power of the Spirit, are called to charity, sincere charity towards each other. Very often when we talk about the new evangelization, we talk about the theological virtue of faith, because that is the virtue that we want to stir up and reawaken in the hearts of those in whom the faith has grown cold. But what about that virtue of charity? What place does charity have in the new evangelization? I discovered this on an airplane at 5:30 in the morning 2 weeks ago. I wanted to share with you a little new evangelization moment, you could say, that I had on a trip up to Bismarck, North Dakota for a conference. I was boarding this little jet's a generous word, it was a little tin can up to Bismarck, and it was 5:30 in the morning, everybody's getting on, we're all grumpy, and I'm looking for my seat, hoping that I've got a window seat with no one next to me so I can just pray and sleep. And I look, and there aren't many people on this flight yet, but I had heard that it was a full flight. And I looked, and I see one lady sitting in the middle and the left, all by herself. And I thought, wouldn't you know, I guarantee I'm getting that seat next to her. And sure enough, I see that she's in row 26A, and I'm 26B. And I thought, okay, that's all right. So I go up to row 26, and I remove my backpack, and she looks up at me and realizes that I'm coming in, and she starts laughing. I said, laughing? Was it something I said? Well, I haven't said anything to her yet. And her laugh was more of a cackle. I thought, ooh, what's going on here? And of course, I'm traveling in my collar, as I always do, in case someone wants to talk. And I sat down, and she said, buckle up, Father. I got a lot of questions for you. It's like, great, this is just great. So we ended up talking for the entire duration of that flight. It wasn't a long flight, but the conversations were, in fact, quite difficult. They were good and fruitful conversations, but yeah, very difficult. Let's call her Mary, and that way, entrusting her to the intercession of Our Lady. Mary, as it turns out, wanted to know about a lot of social issues of the church and a lot of questions of why the creed was retranslated. What is this consubstantial doing in there when one in being was good enough? But it turns out that underneath it all, as we talked a little bit longer, I kind of got to the root of what her beef really was with the church. Mary, as it turns out, had been really burned by a lack of charity, or rather, offenses against charity on the part of the church towards her, in the persons of her school teachers, in the persons of her pastors, and also the people of her parish, expressing not only a lack of charity, but also a great offense against charity towards her. And it's at that moment that I realized that many of our brother and sister Catholics who find themselves lapsed in the faith, it's not necessarily because they're slothful, or they just become distracted and kind of fall away. Some of them really have suffered a bit of uncharity on the part of the church. However, later into that conversation, after we talked for about an hour and 15 minutes, she pulled out her headphones, and I thought, sweet, this could be the end of the conversation. And I commented on the headphones trying to steer it that way, and I said, oh, those are some nice headphones. She said, oh, yeah, I travel once a week, so I like to listen to music. And I said, oh, those must be really good headphones. And I'm holding my little iPod and little, plugs in there. And I said, these headphones don't work really well. They don't really block out a lot of noise. And she paused and looked down at her little packet of headphones and just said, take them. I said, excuse me? She said, take them, just take them. And I thought, what? I was really perplexed by this, and she said, look, you need them, I travel a lot, I can get another pair, just take it as a small gift. I thought, oh, that's really, really nice of her. So I responded with saying, well, I know for whom I'm going to be offering Mass later today. And she exploded in tears, just started sobbing, gasping. She had never had someone tell her that another person is going to be praying for her, much less offer a Mass for her. I've never had someone do that for me, she said. She taught me in that moment that even if our fallen away brother and sisters don't understand or accept or respond to the language of faith, however good of a conversation we could have about it, they do respond to another form of language, and in fact, they know how to speak it too, charity. And perhaps that can be a lesson for us or a piece of advice from this Mass, where we are encouraged by our collects and even by the words of St. Paul in the letter to the Ephesians to speak the truth with love. And not just in the sense of speaking truth to our neighbor softly, gently, or with respect, but really speak the truth in and through acts of charity. Specifically, I found, tell someone else that you're praying for them. Not nearly as a nice or kind of a smooth transition out of a conversation. I'm praying for you, all right, keep you in prayer, okay. But no, an act of faith, an act of prayer could be an act of charity towards them. And you know what? If it helps, name it. Say, I'm going to pray a rosary for you. I'm going to offer my Eucharist for you. Or heck, if you really want to shock them, say, I'm going to be fasting for you for the next 3 days. That, I found, really disarms people. So it's just the fact of the matter is, I think, that many of our brothers and sisters fall away from the faith because they've been an object of the lack of charity, or perhaps simply they've never experienced charity on the part of the church. So today and from this moment on, we have a chance to give them that charity, a charity that is informed, of course, by faith, informed by a strong meditation on the Word of God, a faith that expresses itself, like St. James tells us in his letter, in acts. Today, from now on, let us speak the truth in sincere charity, for we are members, each one, to one another. And as St. Paul encourages us in Ephesians 4, let us be compassionate to each other and be kind.